We are reading here The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. This is our third read into the book. And last week, we spoke about everyone's perspective on enlightenment. And we continued reading where we left off. Page 14 through 25 is what we read. And we learned about the importance of freeing yourself from the mind, how to rise above thoughts, and how to recognize the thinker within ourselves. So every week after we do the reading, I send out an email. You can choose to participate or not, but it helps you integrate the lessons that we learned through the book and integrate everything. So last week after our session, I sent out homework, which was asking you to take time this week to meditate for 5 minutes each day before we met up again today. And during this time, you were to write about your experience, making note of, was this easy? Was this your first time doing meditation? Was it easy to get in meditation? Or did you have lots of thoughts that kept interrupting you? And if you did have these thoughts, did you take the lessons that you learned last week and observe the thoughts so that you could release them? And also, how did you feel coming out of your meditation? All right. So I'll go in and talk about my experience. I've been meditating for a long time, so meditation is pretty simple for me. But I definitely have to be mindful and take that time and set it aside, because if not, then my mind is definitely racing with a million other things that I think I should be doing. And that's usually the thoughts that come up, is like, oh, I should be doing this or I should be doing that. And I know that that's just the ego trying to interrupt me and disconnect me. So I find it easy for myself to do active meditation where perhaps I'm walking or I'm going to somewhere serene. I have to get out of my own environment, get out of my home. And if I'm walking or exercising, this actually helps me get into meditation a lot easier and become more present with myself. And then I actually don't have to fight my mind. So we're going to go ahead and start reading. So page 25, we're starting at emotion, the body's reaction to your mind. What are emotions? I get caught up in my emotions more than I do in my mind. Mind, in the way I use the word, is not just thought. It includes your emotions as well as all unconscious, mental, emotional, reactive patterns. Emotion arises at the place where mind and body meet. It is the body's reaction to your mind, or you might say, a reflection of your mind in the body. For example, an attack thought or a hostile thought will create a buildup of energy in the body that we call anger. The body's getting ready to fight. The thought that you are being threatened physically or psychologically causes the body to contract, and this is the physical side of what we call fear. Research has shown that strong emotions can cause changes in the biochemistry of the body. These biochemical changes represent the physical or material aspect of the emotion. Of course, you are not usually conscious of all your thought patterns, and it is often only through watching your emotions that you can bring them into awareness. The more you are identified with your thinking, your likes and dislikes, judgments and interpretations, which is to say, the less present you are as the watching consciousness, the stronger the emotional energy charge will be, whether you are aware of it or not. If you cannot feel your emotions, if you are cut off from them, you will eventually experience them on a purely physical level, as a physical problem or symptom. A great deal has been written about this in recent years, so we don't need to go into it here. A strong unconscious emotional pattern may even manifest as an external event that appears to just happen to you. For example, I have observed that people who carry a lot of anger inside without being aware of it and without expressing it are more likely to be attacked, verbally or even physically, or by other angry people, and often for no apparent reason. They have a strong emanation of anger that certain people pick up subliminally and that triggers their own latent anger. If you have difficulty feeling your emotions, start by focusing attention on the inner energy field of your body. Feel the body from within. This will also put you in touch with your emotions. We will explore this in more detail later. So we're going to pause right there. Welcome, Jasmine. So this is really interesting. We just finished up the first section on 25 about emotion, the body's reaction to your mind, stating that basically most people hear emotion arises at the place where mind and body meet. A lot of people are not aware of their own emotional patterns that they fall into. More people identify, like the more you identify with your likes, judgments, and interpretations, the less you are actually being present in your life. And how holding on to certain emotions can come up for you to experience them on a physical level, a physical problem or symptom, and actually have experiences with other people in your life. I find this very true, especially like my years of studying Chinese medicine, that I know all the emotions stored in the body can cause dis-ease within the body, or as the Chinese would put it, where the qi is stagnant. So anger, since he speaks about anger here, anger is usually held within the liver. So this is where like a lot of people who have failing livers and stuff like that, besides if they have other addictions that may trigger this, but like they could have a failing liver because of the anger and stuff like that. They'll usually have issues digesting things and sleeping, waking up at certain times in the day or in the night, I'm sorry. And this is identified as that. Like you can lead all the organs and all the dis-ease back to some type of emotion. Have any of you guys ever experienced that? Discipline through a little heart there. Jasmine wants to come up. Welcome to the stage, Jasmine. Thanks for joining us.
Hi. I mean, this is something that I have recently been looking into because I had a shoulder/neck issue for going on for a while. And I think kind of like when I figured out where, I guess I looked up, like what is causing it and the emotional aspect of it and just try to work on that to get rid of my shoulder pain.
Yes, 100%. I've done that so many times with my massage clients, where they'll have different pains in certain areas, and I'm like, "Hey, do you have this going on in your life?" And they're like, "Oh my gosh!" And I'm like, "Yeah, it's science. It's not
Right?
even like my intuition. It's science.
It
It's so
is.
interesting."
Yeah, that's so interesting to me.
Yeah, and sometimes like the more like you can just clear that up. Have you been working on it now since you figured out the emotion that's connected to it?
So I haven't had the issue in a while, but at the time, yes, I did. I did work on that emotion.
That's so
Yeah,
awesome.
and I haven't had the issue, and I'm a nail tech. So for a while, I'm just like, okay, I'm a nail tech. Yeah, my arm is hurting. And I was seeing way less clients back then. And I keep pretty busy now and have not had the issue arise anymore.
That's so awesome. I
Yeah.
love that. Awesome. All right. Cool. So let's go ahead and let's move on to the next section. We're on page 26. And for those jumping in, The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. You say that an emotion is the mind's reflection in the body, but sometimes there's a conflict between the two. The mind says no, while the emotion says yes, or the other way around. He says, if you really want to know your mind, the body will always give you a truthful reflection. So look at the emotion, or rather feel it in your body. If there is an apparent conflict between them, the thought will be the lie. The emotion will be the truth. Not the ultimate truth of who you are, but the relative truth of your state of mind at the time. Conflict between surface thoughts and unconscious mental process is certainly common. You may not yet be able to bring your unconscious mind activity into awareness as thoughts, but it will always be reflected in the body as an emotion. And of this, you can become aware. To watch an emotion in this way is basically the same as listening to or watching a thought, which I described earlier. The only difference is that while a thought is in your head, an emotion has a strong physical component and so is primarily felt in the body. You can then allow the emotion to be there without being controlled by it. You no longer are the emotion, you are the watcher, the observing presence. If you practice this, all that is unconscious in you will be brought into the light of consciousness. So, observing our emotions is as important as observing our thoughts. Yes, make it a habit to ask yourself, what's going on inside me at this moment? That question will point you in the right direction. But don't analyze, just watch. Focus your attention within. Feel the energy of the emotion. If there is no emotion present, take your attention more deeply into the inner energy field of your body. It is the doorway into being. And then we have a pause here. I really like this because this is how I teach people how to recognize their intuition. Because usually we'll have that feeling, right? The gut feeling of your intuition. And then you have another thought, and your mind is now analyzing things. And it's that always first feeling before it becomes a thought. So this is definitely important to observe our emotions prior to going, like, as well as observing our thoughts 100%. As far as like even like you said, you give that example for like healing your shoulder. Now you're listening, you were drawn to like figure out what was really going on emotionally because your body was telling you something. It wasn't in your mind, it was your body going, hey, something's not really right. So that's like a prime example, Jasmine, for you.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I even went to see a doctor, and at one point, like, she brought up stress. And I was like, you know what? I am really stressed. And that's
Mm.
kind of like what made me like want to dive in deeper if, she didn't think it was from repetitive movement.
Wow, that was a good doctor.
Yeah, I know,
you know
right?
Most people would be like, here's a pill.
I know, right? No, she was like, oh, it's stress, and she knew that I had a little one, the baby, and she's like, maybe you're carrying the baby too much, but she's like, the whole thing was that I wasn't feeling the pain while I was working. So she's like, if you're not feeling
Mm.
the pain while you're working and you're feeling it after, it's because basically I'm going back into a state of like, I guess I'll be in a state of flow when I'm working versus when I
Yes,
go
that's
back out to
yes.
stress. Yeah.
You're in a, yeah, that's like doing the thing that, you know, you love, your passion. So like your mind is
Right.
like in here and you're doing your art and 100%, and then you come out of it and you're like, oh wait, I'm back to reality,
Yeah.
or
Exactly.
a different reality.
Right. Exactly.
All right, so the next section here is an emotion usually represents an amplified and energized thought pattern, and because of its often overpowering energetic charge, it is not easily initially to it is not easy initially to stay present enough to be able to watch it. It wants to take you over, and it usually succeeds, unless there is enough presence in you. If you are pulled into unconscious identification with the emotion through lack of presence, which is normal, the emotion temporarily becomes you. Often a vicious cycle builds up between your thinking and the emotion. They feed each other. The thought pattern creates a magnified reflection of itself in the form of an emotion, and the vibrational frequency of that emotion keeps feeding the original thought pattern. By dwelling mentally on the situation, event, or person that is perceived the cause of the emotion, the thought feeds in energy to the emotion, which in turn energizes the thought pattern, and so on. Basically, all emotions are modifications of one primordial, undifferentiated emotion that has its origin in the loss of awareness of who you are beyond name and form. Because of its undifferentiated, listen, don't judge me, nature, it is hard to find a name that precisely describes this emotion. Fear comes close, but apart from a continuous sense of threat, it also includes a deep sense of abandonment and incompleteness. It may be best to use a term that is as undifferentiated as the basic emotion and simply call it pain. One of the main tasks of the mind is to fight or remove that emotion pain, which is one of the reasons for its incessant activity, but all it can ever achieve is to cover it up temporarily. In fact, the harder the mind struggles to get rid of the pain, the greater the pain. The mind can never find the solution, nor can it afford to allow you to find solution, because it is itself an intrinsic part of the problem. Imagine the chief of police trying to find an arsonist when the arsonist is the chief of police. You will not be free of that pain until you cease to derive your sense of self from identification with the mind, which is to say, from ego. The mind is the toppled form, its place of power. I'm sorry, the mind is then toppled form from its place of power, and being reveals itself as your true nature. I'm getting tongue tied. Sorry, guys. Let me take some water. Hold on.
I'm like, you don't have to apologize. You're reading a lot.
I'm like reading that one word, undifferentiated, differentiated. I have to practice that, and I'm like, oh, it comes up like 4 times. All right, so it says, yes, I know what you're going to ask. I was going to ask, what about positive emotions such as love and joy? They are inseparable from your natural state of interconnectedness with being. Glimpses of love and joy, or brief moments of deep peace, are possible whenever a gap occurs in the stream of thought. For most people, such gaps happen rarely and only accidentally in moments when the mind is rendered speechless. Sometimes triggered by great beauty, extreme physical exertion, or even great danger. Suddenly, there is inner stillness, and within that stillness, there is a subtle but intense joy, there is love, there is peace. Usually, such moments are short-lived, as the mind quickly resumes its noise-making activity, what we call thinking. Joy and peace cannot flourish until you have freed yourself from mind dominance. But they are not what I would call emotions. They lie beyond the emotions, on a much deeper level. So you need to become fully conscious of your emotions and be able to feel them before you can feel that which lies beyond them. Emotion literally means disturbance. The word comes from the Latin emorve, emorve, E-M-O-V-E-R-E, meaning to disturb. Love, joy, and peace are deep states of being, or rather three aspects of the state of interconnectedness with being. As such, they have no opposite. This is because they arise from beyond the mind. Emotions, on the other hand, being part of the dualistic mind, are subject to the laws of opposites. This simply means that you cannot have good without the bad. So the unenlightened mind identified condition, what is sometimes wrongly called joy, is usually the short-lived pleasure side of the continuously alternating pain-pleasure cycle. Pleasure is always derived from something outside yourself, whereas joy arises from within. The very thing that gives you pleasure today will give you pain tomorrow, or it will leave you. So its absence will give you pain. And what is often referred to as love may be pleasurable and exciting for a while, but it is an addictive clinging and the extremely needy condition that can turn into its opposite at the flick of a switch. Many love relationships, after the initial euphoria has passed, actually oscillate between love and hate, attraction and attack. Real love doesn't make you suffer. How could it? It doesn't suddenly turn into hate, nor does real joy turn into pain. As I said, even before you are enlightened, before you have freed yourself from your mind, you get glimpses of true joy, true love, or of a deep inner peace, still vibrantly alive. These are aspects of your true nature, which is usually obscured by the mind. Even within a normal addictive relationship, there can be moments when the presence of something more genuine, something incorruptible can be felt. But there will only be glimpses, soon to be covered up again through the mind interference. It may then seem that you had something very precious and you lost it, or your mind may convince you that it was all an illusion. The truth is, it wasn't an illusion, and you cannot lose it. It is part of your natural state, which can be obscured but can never be destroyed by the mind. Even when the sky is heavily overcast, the sun hasn't disappeared. It's still there on the other side of the clouds. The Buddha says that pain or suffering arises through the desire or craving, and that to be free of pain, we need to cut the bonds of desire. All cravings are the mind seeking salvation or fulfillment in external things, and in the future, as a substitute for the joy of being. As long as I am in my mind, I am those cravings, those needs, wants, attachments, and aversions. And apart from them, there is no I, except as except as a mere possibility and unfulfilled potential, a seed that has not yet sprouted. In that state, even my desire to become free or enlightened is just another craving for fulfillment or completion in the future. So don't seek to become free of desire or achieve enlightenment. Become present. Be there as the observer of the mind. Instead of quoting the Buddha, be the Buddha. Be the awakened one, which is what the word Buddha means. Humans have been in the grip of pain for eons, ever since they fell from the state of grace, entered the realm of the mind, and lost awareness of their being. At that point, they started to perceive themselves as meaningless fragments in an alien universe, unconnected to the source and to each other. Oof, that is so powerful. Pain is inevitably, as long as you are identified, pain is inevitable as long as you are identified with your mind, which is to say, as long as you are unconscious, spiritually speaking. I'm talking here primarily of emotional pain, which is also the main course of physical pain and physical disease. Resentment, hatred, self-pity, guilt, anger, depression, jealousy, and so on. Even the slightest irritation are all forms of pain. And every pleasure or emotional high contains within itself the seed of pain, its inseparable opposite, which will manifest in time. Anybody who has ever taken drugs to get high will know that the high eventually turns into a low and that the pleasure turns into some form of pain. Many people also know from their own experience how easily and quickly an intimate relationship can turn from a source of pleasure to a source of pain. Seen from a higher perspective, both the negative and the positive polarities are faces of the same coin, are both part of the underlying pain that is inseparable from the mind-identified egoic state of consciousness. There are two levels to your pain: the pain that you create now, and the pain from the past that still lives within your mind-body. Ceasing to create pain in the present and dissolving past pain. This is what I want to talk about. That was a lot. We have pause here. That was a lot to absorb. All right. So there was a lot here that I really felt was important. A lot of the things that he spoke about in this chapter are all things that I truly experienced when I would say that I became enlightened, when I really became being in that state. And this is something I talk about all the time. Real love doesn't make you suffer. A lot of people get stuck on, like, the twin flame, their soulmate, stuff like that. And even in regular relationships, we have such a skewed view of what love is. But like he says here on page 29, love, joy, and peace are deep states of being, three aspects of the state of interconnectedness with being. And that's something in my book that I'm writing about. I'm teaching people, like, to really focus on those three vibrations. Like, that's when I really wanted to feel love, and I was trying to understand what love meant to me. I focused on that. What does love feel like to me? And becoming that vibration within. And it's such a beautiful thing, because, like, we think that when we meet people and we become in love, that they're the source of that love. But it isn't. It's only the love that's within us we're trying to project it onto someone. And that's a beautiful thing. Like, it can never go away. It's within us. And after I really understood love, then I started focus on the vibration of peace and what that meant to me. And I would say that's when I truly felt that enlightenment, was through that vibration of peace. So do you guys have anything to add in here? Any questions?
I guess for me, it's just, I guess, reading this again. But basically, where I'm at now, how at the very end he says, there are two levels to your pain: the pain that you create now, and the pain from the past that still lives in your mind and body. And let me tell you, that's serious because there's like so many, I guess, issues that I've been having that I've been trying to work on and I thought I worked on. And like I recently started doing therapy and I'm just realizing how much of my past, like my past is still living in my mind and body without me even being conscious of it.
right?
It's
Yeah,
crazy.
because it creates, neural pathways within the body, all these emotions and stuff, and then we begin to identify with it.
Right.
That's, and not even to say like, this is you or anything, but that's our victim mentality where, who are we without these experiences? Like all these things that I experienced in my life up until now, like they created me, and without me having those stories, then who am I?
I was actually there before I read this book, like a few
Oh,
years
nice.
ago. Like I was there. That was me. Like I didn't know anything outside of that. And now is when I'm starting to realize that it's okay to have people love me a certain way and let people in, like as long as I'm good with myself and I know that's the vibration that I'm putting out, I have to be
Hmm.
confident with that too.
Yeah. I love this paragraph. He says, humans have been in the grip of pain for eons, ever since they fell from the state of grace, entered the realm of time and mind, and lost awareness of being. At that point, they started to perceive themselves as meaningless fragments in an alien universe, unconnected to the source and to each other. And this is literally like my whole purpose of like wanting to help people is to make them remind their connectedness to source and each other. So like that whole paragraph is like he didn't have to write the whole book. Like it's just that, and I'm just like flabbergasted. Like it's, it's so true. It's such an amazing paragraph.
Yeah, that's beautiful and that is so true.
All right, so now we would move on where we're at. We have more time, so now we're gonna move to chapter 2, page 33, chapter 2. And Jasmine, do you have the book? Do you want to read?
Sure. I mean, I'll read for as much as I can. I have my baby with me, but
Oh, okay.
sure.
Yeah.
But I can read. If he starts interrupting, I might just have to stop.
Okay. No problem.
Okay. So it's consciousness, the way out of pain. Create no more pain in the present. Nobody's life is entirely free of pain and sorrow. Isn't it a question of learning to live with them rather than trying to avoid them? The greater part of human pain is unnecessary. It is self created as long as the observed mind runs your life. The pain you create now is always from some non acceptance, some form of unconscious resistance to what is. On the level of thought, the resistance is some form of judgment. On the emotional level, it is some form of negativity. The intensity of the pain depends on the degree of resistance to the present moment. And this, in turn, depends on how strongly you are identified with your mind. The mind always seeks to deny the now and escape from it. In other words, the more you are identified with your mind, the more you suffer. Or you may put it like this: the more you are able to honor and accept the now, the more you are free of pain, of suffering, and free of the egoic mind. Why does the mind habitually deny or resist the now? Because it cannot function and remain in control without time, which is past and future. So it perceives the timeless, now as threatening. Time and mind are in fact inseparable. Imagine the earth, devoid of human life, inhabited only by plants and animals. Would it still have a past and future? Could we still speak of time in any meaningful way? The question, what time is it? Or what's the date today? If anybody were there to ask it, would be quite meaningless. The oak tree or the eagle would be bemused by such a question. What time? They would ask. Well, of course, it's now. The time is now. What else is there? Yes, we need the mind as well as time to function in this world. But there comes a point where they take over our lives. And this is where dysfunction, pain, and sorrow set in. The mind to ensure the mind, to ensure that it remains in control, seeks continuously to cover up the present moment with past and future. And so, as the vitality and infinite creative potential of being, which is inseparable from the now, becomes covered up by time, your true nature becomes obscured by the mind. An increasingly heavy burden of time has been accumulating in the human mind. All individuals are suffering under this burden, but they also keep adding to it every moment whenever they ignore or deny that precious moment or reduce it to a means of getting to some future moment, which only exists in the mind, never in actuality. The accumulation of time in the collective and individual human mind also holds a vast amount of residual pain from the past. If you no, if you no longer want to create pain for yourself and others, if you no longer want to add to the residue of past pain that still lives on in you, then don't create any more time, or at least no more than is necessary to deal with the practical aspects of life. How to stop creating time? Realize deeply that the present moment is all you ever have. Take the now, the primary focus. I'm sorry, make the now the primary focus of your life. Whereas before you dwelt in time and paid brief visits to the now. Have your dwelling place in the now and pay brief visits to past and future when required to deal with the practical aspects of your life situation. Always say yes to the present moment. What would be more futile, more insane than to create inner resistance to something that already is? What could be more insane than to oppose life itself, which is now and always now? Surrender to what is, say yes to life, and see how life suddenly starts working for you rather than against you.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Man, every time, every page in this book, I'm just like, it excites me.
But
I'm
isn't
like,
it
yes,
crazy how you
I
can
want to
read
live
it
now.
like over and over again, and every time you see something new, like
Yeah. It's so interesting how far I've come since reading this book in the beginning, where reading this book in the beginning, I was like, oh, yeah, this sounds nice. And now I'm like, this is it. This is it. Oh my God, this is it.
I am right there with you.
So I would say this, like, this part of this where we're worried about time. I think I've been talking a lot about time lately with people where, it doesn't exist. I used to say all the time doesn't exist. Who created, I think, who created birthdays was a question that came up, like who created our age? And you look at, I don't know if you've heard of, like, I think it's Ethiopia, where they're actually, right, this year or something like that is like 20, I don't know how many years they're behind us. I think they're behind us by like 7 years.
How's that possible?
That's just what they go by.
Oh, oh, so they read time differently, basically,
Yeah,
right? That's
yeah.
crazy.
But like that right there just proves like it's all made up shit. Like it's just,
It's
but
true when you think about it. It really is. Like,
it's like they created the daylight savings time was created for the farmers, so that during the winter time they would have more daylight hours to work.
right,
So it's just all made up,
right. I
like
mean,
it's
that's
just,
and when you think about it, it's for clocking in and out. Like,
Right. 100%,
to
right?
keep us slaves.
But it does, I mean, it does, like, in a sense, give us a little bit of construct to get certain things done and to meet up and do things. And, but I know he's going deeper into the sense of like, you know, I'll be happy when I do this. I'll be happy when I get this, like, oh, I can finally, on my 18th birthday, I'll be able to do this, like, I think that's where he's really pushing that. Um, Whereas, like, not creating any more time than being in the present.
That's true. And honestly, that's something that I'm not gonna say I'm struggling with. I'm doing better with, but I get to a point sometimes that I like to set goals and things, but then I get so focused on the time that I think I'm at a point right now that I'm just going with the flow and seeing where it takes me.
Oh, okay.
Like that's what's helping me be more present and not have to think about like time.
Not like beat yourself up because you didn't meet a goal in a certain time frame.
Right, right.
Yeah. Like even me with like trying to buy this buying a home where there's been many years that this is like on my wish list and stuff like that and I want to do it. And I really have every time I've um gone towards it, I learned something new that I need to do to get closer to it, but it also would put like a damper in my motivation to continue. But then hindsight, I'm like, oh, it was perfect that it didn't work out, like, or I would have been stuck doing that and this, when I have to remember like where everything happens for a reason, right? That's like perfect saying right there. So like if I would have purchased a home when I wanted to and I was approved, I actually think now how I would have been in a bad position now. So I'm happy it didn't happen back then.
Right, it happens like that. I've been in a few situations with like that too.
So it's 8:50. So we have the next part is a short, so we can get that in, and then the one after that is pretty long. So we'll stop after this next one. Do you want to continue reading, or do you want me to?
Sure, I'll continue.
Okay.
The present moment is sometimes unacceptable, unpleasant, or awful. It is as it is. Observe how the mind labels it and how this labeling process, this continuous sitting in judgment, creates pain and unhappiness. By watching the mechanics of the mind, you step out of its resistance patterns and you can then allow the present moment to be. This will give you a taste This will give you a taste of the state of inner freedom from external conditions, the state of true inner peace. Then see what happens and take. Sorry.
I was gonna say he sounds so cute.
He's two. All right. Then see what happens and take action if necessary or possible. Accept, then act. Whatever the present moment contains, accept it as if you had chosen it. Always work with it, not against it. Make it your friend and ally, not your enemy. This will miraculously transform your whole life. This is literally what you just said.
That's funny. I actually did not read ahead, okay? I promise. That's interesting. I love it.
Right? And actually, there was another part. I should have highlighted it, but when he was explaining about, I guess like resistance and how being in the mind in a certain way is what caused that. Like that was something that I recently ran into too. Trying to remember where it is.
In the last part that you read?
Not the last smaller part, the bigger part that I read.
Oh, is it on the resistance in some form of judgment
Yeah,
on
that one.
33? There's 33 in
It's 33.
the third paragraph. He talks about resistance there. Is that it?
You said page 33?
Yeah.
I don't really see it there. No, I can't find it. I've lost
Okay. I
it.
think it says on the emotional level, it is some form of. Wait, hold on. On the level of thought, the resistance is some form of judgment. On the emotional level, it is some form of negativity.
Yeah, that
The
one.
in, the intensity of the pain depends on the degree of resistance to the present moment, and this in turn depends on how strongly you are identified with your mind. Ah, that makes so much sense. That
Yeah,
goes
like,
really deep into the emotional body part, like so say with dis-ease, right? Somebody who has now had this emotion stuck in their body and now it's manifested in physical form. And now they've identified with this where, they're like, "Oh, I have this disease." And they're saying it over and over again. So the body then itself is just going to hold on to it and it's going to expand and expand. And so for me, that's more resistance of getting into the flow and getting into being, which would allow the physical body to release that emotion.
that was deep.
My bad.
That was good. That was good.
That's all the years of Chinese medicine and spirituality combined right there.
I'm sure. Yeah.
All right. So where do we end? We ended on page 36. I am going to send out an email either tonight or tomorrow. I know tomorrow's a holiday for a lot of people, but you'll be able to get the link for the reading as well. I am going to put, because if you go back into my Twitter profile, you'll notice that all the recordings of the book club get lost. So I'm creating a page on my website where you'll actually be able to go to, and it'll have all the links for all the different sessions. So you'll actually be able to find them very easily, and you're not going to have to dig through a bunch of stuff. And this way you can also share them with people. The page is going to be public, so people, if they want to come in and check out the spaces, they can. And this is for us to reference back to as well. So I'm Shannon. I'm your host. I'm the Spiritual Gangsta from Anchored Soul Therapy. And I look forward to seeing you guys in the future. All right.
See you next week. Thank you.
See you next week. Bye.
Bye.